Active hope is waking up to the beauty of life, on whose behalf we can act. We belong to this world. The web of life is calling us forth at this time. We've come a long way and are here to play our part. With active hope, we realize that there are adventures in store, strengths to discover, comrades to link arms with. Active hope is a readiness to discover the strengths in ourselves and in others. A readiness to discover the reasons for hope and the occasions for love. A readiness to discover the size and strength of our hearts, our quickness of mind, our steadiness of purpose, our own authority, our love for life, the liveliness of our curiosity, the unsuspected deep well of patience and diligence, the keenness of our senses, and our capacity to lead. None of these can be discovered in an armchair or without risk.
I have gratitude for my teachers, and I sing. To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth, to call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. Active hope. 6 months ago, I was at an expressive arts retreat themed Active Hope. After the book that Joanna Macy wrote, which I strongly recommend, Active Hope, How to Face the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy, by Joanna Macy and Kristen Johnstone. We studied the book in preparation for the retreat, and soon after I returned from the retreat, I had a waking dream. And waking dreams are different than the regular dreams, but they happen when you're in that space when you're not fully asleep and you're not fully awake and your mind is running a story for you. And I don't have very many of these in my life, but when they happen, I try very hard to remember them and explore the meaning that they could be offering to my life. In the dream, I was standing over a large patch of grassy dirt at the foot of some trees, and I looked down and I saw 2 colonies of ants, black ants and red ants, and they were in the middle of a brutal battle with each other, perhaps a territorial war. Both sides were equal in members, and I watched them closely as they worked in their divided teams, pulling off each other's legs and breaking little bodies of their opponents. It was really painful to watch, and I wished I could do something to stop it, so I looked away from the war zone. And all around them, above them, below them, there was open, empty space, green grass, tree roots, other places they could explore that would not involve hurting and defeating each other. When I awoke, I thought a lot, and I think still, about this dream. At the time, it called to mind the beautiful Rumi extract. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I started thinking about the battlefields all around me and those we find ourselves within. And I wondered what it would look like if we could move into more spaces of openness, like my dream. I wondered how to bring people in seeming opposition together for something different, something that could honor our collective humanity outside of right and wrong. That open space, it feels like it's filled with active hope to me. Active hope, our topic of today's service. To write and share about active hope has meant that I have spent a great deal of time in the darkness, to truthfully find my bearings and my footing in the reality of the situations that we find ourselves in 2017. To personally share about hope, I recognized that if I didn't do my due diligence, that perhaps what I'm about to share would come across as a disingenuous pep rally. I wanted to share a raw poem that came through while I was contemplating what I wanted to share with you today, just to show you where I've been. Abandoned by the light, making love with the darkness, scorched and sculpted, torture, torment, wrestling with the angel of words and meaning, lost in the labyrinth, lost between rock and spirit, doubting my significance. Yet still I press on, hurting so deeply because we matter. I have my share of gremlins. Who am I to speak of hope when there are many times I feel hopeless? Who am I to speak of the power of our gifts when I often doubt my own? Who am I to tell you that everything is not lost when often I despair at our world in upheaval and displacement, broken and going through a massive species extinction? Who am I to speak of hope? But still, here I am, somehow achieving a personal quorum, more hopeful than not. More of me ready to love through active hope than buckle from disbelief. Here I am, simultaneously terrified and courageous, a determined wannabe Good Samaritan, believing that I have found something that some of us may have lost, determined to return these sacred parts of yourself to you, so you can play your powers, your gifts out into the world, the gifts and powers that our world so desperately needs. Let me speak my intention so you know my whole heart. I want this service to remind each of us that we are powerful, expressive, radiant human beings, each with gifts and medicine our world needs. While we do not know how or if our collective human story will end, to me, working on what some call the new story, Joanna Macy regards the new story as well, working on the new story feels full of active hope and possibility and gives great meaning to me to focus on the things I believe in. What is active hope? Our opening reading today came from Joanna Macy, and it offered a redefinition of hope as a verb. Active hope is not the same kind of hope we generally love and know and accept. Regular hope is sort of a wishing, anticipation for something we want to happen. That's regular hope. Active hope, on the other hand, is much harder. It takes much more effort, intention, and dedication. Joanna Macy does not believe active hope is something to have. It is something that you do. You don't have to wait around until you feel optimistic. Hope is a practice. It is something we do rather than have. We cultivate active hope through our caring and by cultivating the courage to answer our calling. Joanna beckons us to look straight in the face at what is being done to our world and each other. She says, hope is what springs from your desire, your caring. It is a response to a calling you feel for the caring for our world. Right now, we are more connected to people, strangers and people we know, than perhaps any time in history. We have access constantly to stories of tremendous suffering of people around the world. Stories of domination, exploitation, oppression, intentional infliction of pain and killings, and the devastating disruptive weather patterns. We are flooded with stories of tremendous human and earthly suffering. This is triggering us and causing great bipolarity, judgment, and righteousness. It is easy to feel lost and insignificant. Not only these humongous, painful stories in our macrocosm, but in our personal microcosm, our immediate lives. We have access to more and more personal stories from people we know, their personal triumphs and struggles, and get bogged down by itty-bitty curiosities. We're literally living out our own real, true life Truman show. What are folks having for dinner? Who just got flowers? And even we can know about our neighbor's crisis when she runs out of toilet paper. All of these details, thanks to human invention, technology, and also thanks to our generous time investment on social media. We are constantly exposed to big and little picture stories alternating between suffering and whimsy, and all of it is a lot to take in and process. Top it all off, Facebook feeds us 6 possible reactions to what we see. Like, love, funny, surprise, sadness, anger. In these times of great turmoil and change, my daily scope of emotions, I find myself living outside of Facebook's choice of emoticons. What about that open space I told you about in the Battle of the Ants story? I'm here to say it is okay to feel disarray, perplexion, or I don't know what the bleep to feel. It is okay for us to not know how to feel about darn near anything right now, and it's all right for us to be concerned, angry, and to want to be engaged. Today, I'd like to offer a few ideas that I think come from that open space. I want to call it the active hope field, AHF. I hope that these sharings will speak and beckon those mutual open spaces and possibilities and call us out of a paradox from powerless into full personal power as we continue our journey into becoming ourselves. To help cultivate active hope, I will talk about 4 personal aspects within our control: our presence, listening, actions, and gifts. To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. Our superpowers, 4 of them. There are many more, but these are the ones I'm going to focus on. Our first one is our presence, our attention. We each have been equally gifted with life energy of presence, right now, in this moment, and in this one, and in this one. Our attention can be steered, cultivated, and focused. We each get to choose where we place our attention. Television, books, Facebook, work, partners, friends, children, activism, volunteering, so many choices for where we can invest our attention. Perhaps we can contemplate if we are placing our attention in all the places we should, or that we should want to. And if there are some energy zappers, perhaps we could work at developing new habits or new exposures that would make us feel more powerful in our lives. Second superpower, sacred listening. This is our ability to listen, but I'm not talking about regular listening. I'm talking about sacred listening. An example of sacred listening is when we are exhausted and we are stirred out of a deep sleep by our baby's painful cry due to some yet to be revealed discomfort. We rise despite our own need for sleep. We listen, we see if we can tell what he needs. We observe and we determine before what we can do to help him so that he can fall back to sleep. Sacred listening is listening to our brothers and sisters and hearing them, honoring them with our presence and deep listening, whether we agree with them or not. Sacred listening is not forming a response or reaction, but simply to be present to hear what needs to be said. In these times of connection, we have opportunities for sacred listening all the time, and yet more often we shift into what we know to be our truth, our own rightness. And while we may be right, by not offering sacred listening, we shut out the possibility of connecting with the person we seek to understand, to listen with compassion, and to see if we can find our sameness in the story. Sacred listening is not easy. it, just like active hope, is a practice. Our third superpower is personal action. We have power over ourselves to either react or act. This may come after sacred listening. We can think a thought, recognize a need, and we can put our bodies and words in action. After our presence in sacred listening is exposed to something, we can decide whether we're going to react or act. And there is a difference between those two as well. If we're going through personal grief, for example, we can feel it, and perhaps over time determine if there is a way to channel our pain or loss into an outward expression or action. Acts contributing to healing and connection or change where needed. Fourth power is our personal gifts. Our personal gifts, aka our callings, and if we don't know our callings or our personal gifts, our stirrings. I'm going to explain this a little bit because sometimes these words point to things and we don't, if it doesn't resonate, so I'm going to go a little deep in this one. There may be these things that are our personal gifts, our stirrings or callings, may bring us great joy, and they also may challenge us. Finding our calling or our personal gifts is not rocket science, but it does take a conscious dedication. Most of us have been living our gifts out much of our lives, whether we know them or not. But I'm here to say there is an incredible power, an active hope in cultivating an awareness of knowing your gifts, of treasuring what they might be. And or if you haven't, to feel drawn to activate them, to live them out somehow. The Dalai Lama said, "The planet does not need more successful people. The planet needs more peacemakers, healers, restorers, storytellers, and lovers of all kinds." Now, not all of us in here are gifted peacemakers, but there are many of us who may be healers and restorers. And if we do not act on these callings, we are not living our lives as fully as we could, or as we are needed. In the story for all ages about Poder had people around him, helping him cultivate his obvious gifts. But because many of us may not know exactly what those are, we need another measure of success than feedback from the gods or accolades from community. Not all of us are rainmakers. Some of us are excellent bakers, fathers, mothers, caretakers. Just so many different gifts. Phil Cousineau is a prolific writer, teacher, and host of my favorite television program, Global Spirit. Phil was mentored by Joseph Campbell, and he created the documentary and book about Joe's life, that's what Phil calls him, the book and film called The Hero's Journey. Most of us have heard the expression, follow your bliss. Well, Phil tells a story about when Campbell was explaining what he meant about following your bliss. It's a wonderful bumper sticker. He says that there was a piece of what Joe said that may have ended up on the editing room floor out of a mistake. He says, because especially for people who don't know what our bliss is, like bliss, that's just this thing. I find bliss a lot of places, but some people it's really hard. So Joe went on to say, and then this clip to the floor, follow your bliss, and if you don't know what that is, follow your fascination. Your fascination reveals your deepest connection to the life force. If you follow it, rather than what society tells you should follow, you will be all right. We each have an opportunity, regardless of our age or stage in life, to explore our curiosities. We may serve in careers that express parts of our gift that we don't like. For example, for nearly 20 years, I was in marketing and public relations, writing and strategizing messages that would impact companies' sales and profits. Perhaps my gift is perception and use of words. I won't be so bold as to say what my gifts may be, as I'm sure I could not know until my dying day, although I am actively pursuing things that bring me joy and challenge. For me, I'm okay just acknowledging the things that stir me into exploration, play, and action. So after sharing these 4 gifts, perhaps you can contemplate these questions. How are your superpowers? How is your relationship with your presence? How does it feel to deeply listen to someone without responding? What actions are you taking to create the world you want to live in? What are your personal gifts? How does your life express your gifts or curiosities? Are you living on purpose? And if you feel stuck in sameness, are you challenging yourself and who you are becoming on a regular basis? Of course, we each have abundant gifts and blessings, many more than I've highlighted today. But today I wanted to spend a little time on our superpowers, personal powers that you can consider and possibly tweak as need be, to align, to feel more empowered, and perhaps more fulfilled during these transitional times as we move into the new story. To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. I want to know what would happen if we opened ourselves up to this active hope field, this intentional possibility. What happens if instead we see these times not as the worst, but as the most demanding, the most healing, creative, and transformative, dare I say, evolutionary? We have lived for hundreds of thousands of years trying to master human creativity and destroyed a lot in the process. But now, in connection and awareness, we have every chance to go deeper in our human consciousness and human actions. I love you. I love each of you. In my 47 years in this ever-aging and becoming body, my spirit and soul believe that each of us are connected and traveling together and are inextricably linked and dependent upon each other. That is why it hurts so much for us to disagree about things. That is why we offend each other. Our physical separateness is illusory. In the Unitarian Universalist faith, in Christianity, in Buddhism, in the Muslim faith, in Native American spirituality, each of these faiths and many more share the same belief in common, and that is our interconnectedness, the interconnected web of life. In closing, I'd like to share a personal story about this interconnectedness. Last week, I was in the mountains offering a play shop about activating our gifts for 13 women at Women's Spirit. I'd never met any of these women before, and I had been approached by a program organizer to see if I could come and create a 3-day program for the retreat. I was really excited about this because I've done a lot of personal investigation about gifts and power, and I actually longed to create a playful program that would nurture women through a sharing and making reflective process in the exploration of gifts. I brought all the supplies to teach them how to make a handmade journal. Now, years ago, a beloved member of our church, a woman I only met once, sadly died. Her husband had given me a lot of her costume jewelry, trusting that somehow I could use her pieces in my work with groups and art making. I went through my supplies before I left, and I decided to bring some of the beautiful drop-down earrings that she had and gift them to the women to potentially adorn their journals as dangles. Before the retreat, during the retreat, I thought about not giving them out because they belong to someone else that these women didn't know, and it is sad to say these belong to somebody who has died. But I listened to the overriding intention and the gift, and I remembered my promise to let her light shine. After my program was over, one of the women who had participated was talking with me about some grief that she was going through. And she said that she still had never got over losing her friend Judy. Well, it turned out that the earrings that I had given her were Judy Dorsey's. And I shared that story with Ken last week and asked him if it was okay to share with you all. So this interconnection that we have, I didn't know anybody at the retreat. I knew one woman who came because she knew I was going. And these women in my group, this woman was lifted up by Judy through this great spirit, this connection. And had I resisted what I thought I needed to do to make everybody happy, had I resisted that, she wouldn't have felt that love over these years of me taking care of these little sacred objects. Maybe we all could sing this together. To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. To call myself beloved, to